What is the point of rewatching anime, right? What is the point of rewatching anime is a question I've been asked more times than I thought I probably should. And I'm going to address that right now, perhaps in less of a structured way that I would perhaps like to present, but I'm going to try to present it regardless. So right now you're looking at a VMU, which was the memory component of Sega Dreamcast. This is a video by Stop Skeletons from Fighting. And while I was watching this video, I couldn't help but think about High Score Girl. And High Score Girl is an anime I've been thinking about a lot this week. It's a fantastic series. I'm not sure like how popular it is within like people discussing it, but it's honestly whatever. I think it was like 2018 or something. It came out 2019 maybe. I think 2018 when it came out. I think it was easily the best show of the year, without question. Both seasons are fantastic. Once you get past the kind of janky animations, it's perhaps one of the most heartwarming anime you might ever watch. And if you are someone who enjoys 90s video games, especially arcade games, you have no excuse not to watch the show. It's honestly like it's such a good show, man. I can't really like concisely say what makes it so special. It's just like you can tell the amount of love that was poured into this show and how honest it is about its reverence for 90s arcade games and Japanese video game culture and everything. Excuse me, during the formative years of like the industry. Like not just Street Fighter, but like the Sega Saturn, like all the weird oddities, but like just that era of games when everything was magical and Virtua Fighter came out and people were freaking the fuck out that holy shit there are polygons now, dude. And then like the main character going to the arcade and seeing the fucking cabinet and being blown away, that type of shit, dude. And then not only besides the whole thing about like, oh man, video games are so cool, right? Don't you remember how cool video games were? But like it has such a heartfelt story about these two characters just falling in love, and the final episode of the show, I'm not going to spoil it, but it was one of the few moments that I've cried during watching an anime. It was just everything just came together so nicely, and then I was able to look back on everything and be like, damn, what a journey that was. And the reason why I made this connection is pretty obvious, that I am someone who enjoys watching videos about old video game consoles and peripherals and video essays on YouTube. And I was watching a while back, I think when I first remembered High Score Girl, Thor High Heels, who is a YouTube channel person that I'm quite fond of, released a video about mysterious 3D fighters. And it was a video I worked throughout the course of the week. It was like 2 hours and 40 minutes or something. But while I was watching that, I kept remembering High Score Girl because I was like, this is the show, dude. And it wasn't the show that introduced me to fighting games. What actually introduced me to fighting games was the old channel Super Best Friends Play, for those who are aware. The Friday Night Fisticuff stuff. Massive nostalgia there, but like I've been someone who is interested in fighting games but is terrible at them. And the first time I played Melty Blood, Actress Again, Current Code with my brother, I had played it a couple hours before. Maybe not a couple hours, maybe like 10 hours or something. And the first time we load up the game, he beats me. He wipes the floor with me, and that just shows how good my fighting game level is, based on the fact that he has never played a fighting game before, and he had never touched Melty Blood, obviously. But anyways, High Score Girl is a show I've been thinking about a lot this past week, and I might end up rewatching it because it's just so good. It's so good. I have so much good memories with it, and that just brings into focus the main question: why the hell do I even rewatch anime? A lot of times I find myself thinking about anime I've seen before, and whenever I go about my normal life, I make connections between anime, between the media that I consume, and I think that's ultimately the goal of such media, to sort of interject itself within your life, or at least to remind you of the actual more tangible things that you can that you have experienced, and make connections between the two. Like not necessarily influence your life, but perhaps make you change the way you see things and perceive things. And a show that I think about that does that very well is something like Mushishi, which like you can just watch that show and then immediately after you go walk in the woods or something and you see everything around you and you have a change of perspective that there's certain things out there that are mysterious and have a certain magic to them, in not so much like a spiritual sense, but just like just an awe of seeing the things around you and being a bit more cognizant of that stuff. So a large reason why I'll rewatch shows is because I find myself thinking about them a lot, and I want to remind myself of that. I did that with Serial Experiments Lane. I made that one video ranting about it and being like, yeah, fuck it, I'm a Lane fag. And then immediately after, I went to go rewatch the show. And I guess this brings into the second thing why you rewatch stuff is, well, it's actually twofold. The first is that when you rewatch a show, you're watching it again. So it's similar to playing a game on New Game Plus, where you are familiar with the game, the mechanics, and what it has to offer, and then going into it again, you have you are more ready for what it has to offer, and you know the story beats, you know what's going to happen, you know the characters, and you know what will happen in the future, and you're able to see how the story is constructed and how it leads you there. And maybe you get a greater appreciation for what it does or what it did, or in the case of Serial Experiments Lane, you might have a greater understanding of what it is, and knowing things that happen in the future or things in your own life that have helped you understand it. Like just going back and rewatching it can help you see things that you might not have seen before, gain a greater appreciation of the show and what it does. And I think that's really special, and that's a sign of a good show. A show that is rewatchable is automatically an 8 out of 10 for me. And it's a show that like I know I could see it again because there is something more in there, or it just was such an enjoyable experience like High Score Girl that I can see myself returning to it. Another reason why you might rewatch a show, as in the case with Lane as well, is that after finishing the show, you would just have a better understanding of it, and it will help you understand it better, honestly. Or just being a show that you enjoy. And that's mostly why I rewatch anime. I rewatch shows because I want to remind myself of it. And I guess the last point is one of the biggest reasons why I rewatch shows. Is also to somewhat address the question some people ask me, is how do you not get tired of anime? The reason you rewatch shows partially is to remind yourself of the good shit. To remind yourself of like, dude, this is how good anime can be. You go rewatch something because you know it's good. Of course, there are occasions where you might rewatch something and you'll be like, well, that wasn't as good as I thought it was. But there's oftentimes cases, and the one I like to bring up with talking about this is Amagami SS, that you go rewatch a show that you might have thought was pretty decent, and then you end up coming out of it being like, holy shit, dude, that was actually amazing. I didn't know it was that good. Or in the case with me with Amagami SS, is that immediately after watching it, or maybe not immediately after, but the years following my watching of it, I was seeking a certain type of show, a cozy Bishoujo game adaptation, with nice characters, the comfy setting, high school setting, not too bright, but the colors not too subdued. And Amagami SS was that show. I was seeking that show again, and I wasn't able to put my finger on it, or I wasn't able to recognize that was the show that made me want to watch more of it. And when I rewatched that show, I think it was like in 2019 or something, 2018, I realized like, holy shit, dude, this was the show that I've been looking for all these years, and I just never realized that it was the one I've already seen. And rewatching it made me realize that it's one of my favorite anime, because this is the show that I want to see more of. And maybe not necessarily see more of, but it's the show that I care about so much. And I just wasn't able to recognize that without going through watching more anime and gaining more perspective. That's another thing. The watching more anime, you come back after watching 100, or at least in my case, you watch hundreds of anime in between, you come back to that show and you're able to appreciate it more. I think shows that are like that are stuff like Lucky Star, where like if you watch Lucky Star after watching like 10 anime, you won't really have too much perspective because you will be like, yeah, it was Lucky Star, or something like Ava maybe, one of those shows that is very influential. Like if you watch it without the perspective, it doesn't mean as much. But if you watch Ava after seeing 1,000 Ava clones, and then you watch Ava, and you see like, holy shit, this was the best one. Razafan doesn't have shit on this. Bokurano has no shit on this. That kind of stuff. Same thing with like you just go back and you see this and you're like, damn, dude, it was just that good. You have to remind yourself of that, and in the perspective of it, like I said with Lucky Star, that you come back to watch that show. The first time I saw it, I think it was my 300th anime that I watched, and I thought it was excellent. It was life changing. But then I came back to rewatch it after I'd seen like 800 anime, and I had gone through my own character arc of being an otaku, and I was already at the late stage. I was already past Konata at that point, and I go to see it, and I'm like, damn, like I get these references now. I know what they're saying. Same thing happened with Genshiken. It's one of those shows that rewards the perspective that you have of, being into the thing. Now, I'm sure there are a couple other examples of that where, like, not limited to anime either, but like this happens a lot with music, that there are certain types of music and certain types of albums that are created specifically almost for music nerds, or like rate your music fags, that are like, you know, everything in the kitchen sink level of genre tags and shit. But like it's for the people who are already fucking deep in this shit, and they love to see all the influences. They like to see the callbacks. They like to see the references. Not a show defined by references, but a show that sees that gets those things and builds off it. There are a lot of anime that do that. That you're only really able to fully appreciate them after you have perhaps a broader perspective of like what that show does good. The classical example of that is Madoka Magica. That it's a show that rewards people who have seen more, not necessarily, I'm not sure if I 100% agree with that. I bet there are better examples, but that's just the one that popped into my head. Like, it was a show that said that if you have a greater understanding of, the inner workings, and I grew up watching Mahou Shoujo anime, watching Madoka Magica will be a more rewarding experience because you kind of see what it's doing and where it's deviating. Whereas someone who, that's the first Mahou Shoujo anime, they'll just be like, haha, look, it's just a dark Mahou Shoujo anime, right? But they don't recognize the dynamic between Madoka and Homura, and why that's significant, and the significance of the various things, like what the hell are the grief seeds, that kind of thing, and like where it draws its influence from and whatnot. But that's why I rewatch anime, dude. I watch a lot of anime. I always remind myself to rewatch stuff. At least once a month, I'm trying to rewatch something. I get out of my number fag grinding and be like, yeah, I'm just going to sit down, I'm going to rewatch some good shit. And usually I could just blast through it. Like, I sat down a couple months ago, just blasted through the entirety of Rose and Maiden, at least first season, in like one sitting. And I was like, yep, this is just as good as I remembered it. It aged like fine wine. Same thing with like Idolmaster 2011 when I rewatched that shit. It's just, I just like to rewatch stuff because I like to see good anime. I'm sure you do too. So it makes so much sense to just go back and watch something that you know is good. Do you ever go back and re-listen to songs that you like, or do you only listen to it once? Do you ever go back and rewatch YouTube videos, or do you only watch them once? You watch stuff to remind yourself how good it is. You remind yourself, like, yep, this is what I like. And of course, there are situations where you might rewatch something and be like, you know what, that wasn't as good as I once remember it was. But then you move on from that and you learn from that. It can be a bit disheartening, and it's not all fun and games. Like I said, like you're not going to rewatch every show and come back thinking it's better than you once remember. but oftentimes you get into different headspaces. Like you might be more willing to accept something, like a more psychological show if you're in a better mindset for that and whatnot. But I guess this rant has gone on a bit long, or at least longer than I perhaps wanted it to be. And I guess that's about it. I just remind yourself to rewatch some shows eventually. It's a fun experience, it's worthwhile, and I highly recommend it. And that's why I rewatch anime.